Hi guys, it's that time again. Which is better, Incantation or Immolation? I'm gonna start. Well, before I start, I'm gonna leave links to tracks in the description down below to check out songs by GORGUTS. Okay, let's resume. So, Immolation is often seen as one of the greatest death metal bands to come out of New York. Immolation are pretty consistent for death metal in regards to managing to keep putting out high quality albums, considering that this album was released in 1991. This album that made Immolation one of the big four of New York death metal is notable for being a mix of old school and brutal death metal. The album is brutal. The album opener, Into Everlasting Fire, means business as the music and lyrics paint an apocalyptic picture from a distant future. It's also notable as displayed Immolation's absorption of Florida and Swedish death metal influences. The title track solidifies this album's lyrical focus on darkness, as Satan is the main focus of the song. It's also got some rather catchy guitar riffing and also that comes out of nowhere. Eternal Decadence is a fast number and shows Immolation's influences from New York hardcore, with prominent evidence of this being displayed in some more chuggy parts of the song. In the closing track, Immolation, it's iconic, and it even contains one of the best one-liner lyrics of Dawn of Immolation. Immolation now begins. Couple that with the strongest musicianship on the second half of the album, and you got one of the greatest death metal songs ever, with the vocals being the high mark of the song. Ross Dolan's death growls are surprisingly deep. His growls don't sound like a typical Cookie Monster growl, but instead have a low pitch rasp to them, almost like the harsh vocal equivalent of a bass baritone. Puns aside, Dolan's bass playing is also rather audible for a death metal album, with Into Everlasting Fire being a prime example of this. Craig Smilowski's drum patterns are also complex for this album, and he switches up the tempo during verse, chorus, and even instrumental parts. An example of this is on Despondent Souls, where the verse and the chorus parts are low mid-pace, where the guitar solo part has Smilowski perform double bass. Robert Wagner and Tom Wilkinson display strong guitar chemistry, as the riffs and the dissonance in songs like Those Left Behind and No Forgiveness. Those guitar solos on songs like Burial Ground and Fallen Disease display their virtuosity perfectly. Overall, guitar solos are not that common in New York death metal, as bands with the scene took more from New York's hardcore chug style of playing. While Supplication abused the chugging riffs, Immolation's knack for emphasizing more on guitars makes them the winner between the two. Now, I listened to a more recent album by Immolation called Atonement, and it made me want to listen to old Immolation. Ross Dolan's vocals surely haven't aged between 1991 and now. While Immolation is the least influential of them, Supplication and Incantation, they made sure that old school death metal was a thing in New York. If you haven't listened to this album, make sure you hear the dissonant riffs, because your work has to be 100% better after listening to this album. Switching gears, we're going to look at Onward to Golgotha by Incantation. Going deeper into the underground, one of the most important bands I would refer to, and probably the vast majority of death metal fans out there would be Incantation. The beginnings of the band date back to 1989, right after the brain of the band, guitarist John McEntee, decided to leave Revenant and found his own group. It signed up at the time for the material demos, and most importantly, the full album to begin form, like a short episode of John Rin's Mortician's lineup. It was composed of John on guitars, Craig Pillard on vocals and guitars, Ronnie Dio on bass, and Jim Rowe on drums, and it was released in 1992, and the effects of these recordings were even more devastating than the debuts of even Deicide. Now, the topic seems simple, and well, as it's at a time when this album was released that relatively few played so underground, brutally raw, and similar to John's band. But what's more, compared to the other death metal albums, is that this period, Incantation's debut, was even less kind to the listener, and honestly very good, because such a dose of rottenness, brutality, and insane atmosphere in coherent and equally attracting compositions are hard, even today. Shows like Rose, intensive drumming, or on the other sides, doom metal slowdowns are perfectly fitted into the atmosphere of the underground. And if it wasn't enough, the band had another rarity, i.e. Craig's vocals, and Low Like from the Grave, with tracks like Christine the Afterbirth, Devour Death, Blasphemous Cremation, or Immortal Cessation. As the most representative, it's impossible to deny the power and uniqueness that beats from this music, while from the very first seconds of Golgotha, it's actually audible. This is definitely one of my favourite death metal recordings. I was to say nicely that it's probably underground and this is best as it will say on the CD, but it it will not suit it anyway, considering the ultra high level of the next 2 releases. So there you have it. Let me know in the comments down below which album you thought was better. And don't forget to check out the links that I left in the description down below to check out GORGUTS. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.